Hey everyone, my name is Jared,
And I'm Autumn,
and welcome to Coaches and Dragons. We're so
Coaches and
excited.
Dragons. Ah! I only
We
do
do
this
this song
every
every
video, Jared.
time,
I only do the song every time, Jared.
but we're keeping it in. So we're so excited to chat with y'all today because this month we're featuring our guide to leveling upwards.
What does it mean to level up? Or is it like leveling upwards?
Leveling upwards. So leveling upwards comes from this idea of failing upwards. So anyone who's been in a role-playing game setting, oftentimes if you're like adjudicating a game, you want your players to have fun and like have the story moving. And so if they can't pick the lock and like then the action stops, like that is actually a fail. But you can fail upwards and say you jam the lock, but now someone's discovered you down the hall, right? And it's a way to keep the story moving and keep everything going. And I thought it was really interesting because we talk about a level up and how like that is very a cool transition experience. You become more powerful. But do we actually talk about a bigger process of how to keep that momentum going? Like if even if you've played like a traditional video game, like the level up screen, it's like this is what's new, swipe, and like it's gone. And we don't actually create an experience around what it means to level up. Take in what's accomplished and what's available to you unless you really take the time to like reflect into it. So leveling upwards is about taking the same thing that makes failing a momentum builder, keeps the action going, contributes to our story, and take those moments for a level up where it's otherwise static, but how do we keep the momentum going? How do we grow? How do we celebrate? And I think that's what you'll find in our guide to leveling upwards.
Mm. And so there's no confusion here. We're not really talking about leveling up in game. We're talking about leveling up in real life.
Yeah. And we actually have a whole section in the guide, which it's called What is a Level Up Moment? And so if you want to like do kind of this checklist exercise of, okay, have I leveled up? Because there's no experience meter. There is no like DM saying, okay, next session, come back prepared with all of your new features and spells and everything else ready to go. How do you define what a level up moment is? And so we have some ways for you to like check in and be like, okay, this feels like a level up slash warrants celebrating and reflecting and acknowledging in that way, as well as some tools to say, if you're wherever you're at now, your current level, how do you design your next level? How do you set that goal and set that intention? So that way, when you know you meet it, you can have this bigger level up moment and celebrate accordingly.
I'm here for these leveling up moments.
Leveling up
Um,
moments.
yeah, I want to know, Jared, when it doesn't have to be the last one because I feel like that maybe it puts pressure, but like what's a leveling up moment from the past year that stands out to you?
Ooh, I would say leveling up moment for the past year. I would say actually launching our YouTube channel. There's a whole different set of features and skills that are required to launch a YouTube channel. And there was a before a YouTube channel and an after a YouTube channel. So I think that's actually the level up moment that comes to mind. Because I'm different and I'm better for it. I'm having to reflect like how does this like factor in to the day-to-day work we're doing at Coaches and Dragons.
Yeah. Did it feel like there was some failing upwards in there as well?
Failing upwards in terms of I definitely had to grind for that experience points of how to edit a video, put it together, and get all those pieces together.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Of course. What about you? What's been your level up moment within the past year?
I mean, I think leveling up moment for me is the moment when the one I want to celebrate the most is the one when I completely reclaim the idea of being creative. In fact, not even reclaim, when I claimed for the first time, really, that I am a creative person. Because for most of my life, I was like, I'm not a creative person. I come from a very creative family. These are all people that are makers. And because I tend to be that like nailed it person where I try to make it and then it's horrible, I just felt like I wasn't that creative. But then I realized I am super creative, just in completely different ways, in ways that you couldn't get at like Joanne's or Michael's. And
She's
so, yeah.
a unique creative. She's not off the shelf creative.
Exactly. But it's so fun to be able to tap into this level of creativity with ideas, with role play, with creating a lot of the stuff like we do with Coaches and Dragons. I now feel like I'm incredibly creative. And that felt like not only a level up, but a level up where I also got to pick a feat.
Well, so that's why we created this whole guide to leveling upwards. And so you have the level up moment, and that's usually what happens. It's like an acknowledgement of oh yeah, now this thing is possible. I'm a different person for it. I feel creative. And then there's a question of so what? And so the guide to leveling upward is designed to help you through that transition, right? Make it a little bit more of an indulgent than swiping through a level up screen or like rolling some dice before you prep for your next session. So there's a couple different components that we have. The first is what we call a map of experience. And no matter what level you're at, even if you haven't had a level up moment, this is a great exercise to go through just to build out that dashboard, that character sheet, whatever representation is for you that says, this is what I've experienced up till now. And that's what the map of experience is designed to do. We also included in the guide this level up investigator, which is to help you kind of interrogate your current level, think about what your next level might look like, and think about where you kind of want to go and how to define that level up accordingly. So if you know that you're wanting to do the YouTube channel, like what's the milestones to hit? What experience do you need to gain to say before YouTube channel, after YouTube channel? Then we've got a way to celebrate it. And I think this is something that's very particular to Coaches and Dragons. Like, don't just do like some like, woo, like level up, good job, and then move on. And so we've got a pretty robust model, which we call the range model for expanding your celebration range, which we'll talk about. But there's a lot of different components for that. And the idea is that you're designing something that's really intentional and you're taking the time for yourself to acknowledge this level up that you've had. And I think when you're in a coaching relationship with somebody, so if you're participating in a Coaches and Dragons campaign with us, like you're gonna get some celebration with us naturally. But this is for those folks who are like currently in a moment where they're trying to DIY. Like, how do you create that celebration ritual that makes sense? And then finally, the last part of the guide is what we call this what's next visioning. And you've made the level, and now you have to decide what's next. And so there's some additional visioning exercises for you to do. So if like the map of experience and the level up investigator are about where you're at now and looking backwards, we've given you some additional tools. That way you can actually take where you are now and look forwards. And I think that's a really exciting process that we don't often do, to say, ooh, I hit this plateau and where am I going to go to next?
So I want to talk a bit more, like, because I think there's some of these where my natural strengths are going to like veer me towards like, oh, I'm sorry, you want me to plan the milestones for the next one? Let's go. This girl's got a background in project management. That's where most of my career was in project delivery. Oh, you want me to make a bulleted list? I'm here for it. I'm going to go and get that done. But then you go in and it's like, oh, I want you to create a visual like map of experiments. I'm like, you know what? I don't know if I really need a map. So like, talk to me about like each one of these together. Like, how do they play together? Or like, if we sorry, let me start over again. Because I'm thinking like we should dive into some of these a little bit. So like, okay, so level up investigator, I feel like I'd be all about that. But talk to me about mapping out my experience. What matters about that? What happens if I don't do it?
Well, first of all, Autumn, do you have a resume?
Yes.
You have a map of experience. You just call it a resume. So at its simplest form. And I'm not trying to sell anyone on like, you've done a resume and now therefore you're done. But I think, you know, a map of experience should help you kind of connect to everything that makes you you up until this point. If you have a scrapbook, you have a map of experience. If you've got a photo album on Facebook that you hope nobody ever finds again, that's a part of like your map of experience. And I think that, you know, this kind of pressure to make it visual, I mean, it's what makes you you. And so there's chances are if you look around, there's things that already might contribute to your map of experience. A bookshelf, all the books you've read and consumed, and that can be a representation of who you are. And so I think while it might seem daunting to do this like much more like visual piece, right? I think it is a really cool opportunity to go beyond the resume, right? Go beyond just the skills and job experience that you have that's like worthy in the professional context and this one part of your life, but actually look at yourself holistically and say, I want to like measure my map of experience by the number of crafts I completed. Like look at my collection of amigurumi crochet toys and like all of the pieces that are there, because like that represents my like cumulative experience from crochet. And so I think by opening the aperture, all the visualizations that are trying to do in this guide is just to help you give you another outlet and another kind of perspective on how to think about your experience, because chances are you probably don't have a dashboard that updates with all of your in-game statistics telling you like what you're better at now. And sometimes we don't have a character sheet that really represents all of the features that we bring to a table that just aren't valued outside of a professional context. Like it might be of interest, but like me being a dungeon master might not show up on my resume, although it definitely should.
Okay, I feel like you sold me, and I understand, dear viewer, I understand that you feel like, did they script this? No, we don't work off script. Like I literally am like, Jared, sell me on it. So um I think what really excites me about this is when you started talking about character sheets and getting to tell, I think about telling that story. And I think about like, I think right now my current character is a level 6. And I think about being able to go and pull up that level 1 character sheet. There is a very real difference. When I think about each one of those levels, I can see like, oh yeah, Z grew here. And oh, I remember at this moment, this really big thing happened. And oh, when she turned level 4, this thing happened. And there's this cool story and all these memories that I get to bring together with that. And it makes the work that's happened over those levels like a lot more meaningful. And like when I think about it that way, I'm like, oh, it is pretty damn cool if I can have that for my real life as well, to be able to say, like, I wish I kind of would have mapped out when I went from like claiming that I'm a creative person to now, like, I don't know how much, like, what all, maybe I'm at level 5 now. I don't know. For level up investigator, right? This is the one that I feel like, oh, you want me to make a plan? I can make a plan. You want me to make a list? I can make a list. But when it comes to like actually going in and taking a look at our current level, like what feels like the most important piece of this?
I think this is about establishing your baseline. So even if you skip the map of experience step, just check in with where you're at now, I think is valuable enough. And I think the questions here are designed to get you to think about your present state. So that way, when you hit the level up, you actually have something to measure up against. Say, oh yeah, look at where I was coming from. If you're in a situation where, maybe you're on the quest for like a new job. If your current level is like, I'm depressed, I'm frustrated, I'm depleted at the end of the day, like these are the signs like I know what level I'm at, however you might qualitatively describe it, even if it's not like a numerical number. But I know a level up, well, this is what will have transformed. This is what will have changed. And that's what the defining level is about. You don't get to appreciate that transformation until you also get to like be honest with yourself about what's the baseline. And then when you get to that point, it's gonna be that much sweeter because you know the current state you're leaving. Another example would be like if you're ever breaking up with a partner, this is like common advice of like before you break up with a partner, write the breakup letter, because you're writing the breakup letter to say this is the current state. This is why you're making this decision. And that way 6 months later, once that situation's gone by and passed and you're on your own like healing journey after that, say that like X texts you again, you can pull up that letter and be like, nope, this is why I made that decision. And also assess if like, okay, you know what? I made the decision and I was also pretty heated. I was like in a very emotional state. I feel like when we're replaced, like maybe we've both done some growth and we can come back. So it could be a great protection mechanism to say, yep, nope, I'm going to stay convicted to these decisions. But it can also be an invitation to say, hey, you know what? How much have I grown?
There are two things that I love so much about this piece then with what you're talking about. One of them is I resonate so much with that idea of like capture your feelings now, because there's so many times, especially with my clients, when they're like, I don't know if I have really anything to talk about. Like, I feel really great. I feel really excited. I feel really energized. It's like, let's dig into that right now.
Yeah.
It's great to come to a coach when you're kind of struggling or feeling blocked. It's also great to work with a coach when you are feeling at your peak, because we can learn from that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What's making you feel freaking awesome? What makes you feel energized? If we can capture it in that moment, this is why I'm excited about this project. This is why I'm excited about that level. Then when we hit the dips, the big challenges, we have multiple nat ones, we have multiple failures, and we can't get through that damn door, right? We can go back to this moment when we were super energized and reconnect and say, oh yeah, that's what is going on here. I love that, Jared.
And it's what I like to call with my clients the vitamin effect, where oftentimes you're doing things that will improve yourself and make your life feel better, right? So you take your vitamins and then you get to the point of feeling better and you say, oh, I'm better. and then you get lax about taking your vitamins, and then you're like,
Yeah.
wait, why do I feel like crap now? It's like, well, because you got to a place of doing the thing that's good for you. You gave up on a little bit, and like the trick is to do the thing that was working for you and like
Mm-hmm.
keep doing it. Because at a certain point, you don't want to be doing a thing just because it's a fix. You want to be doing a thing because it's sustainable, true to you, authentic to who you want to be, and it just becomes like codified.
Mm-hmm.
So taking that peak, saying, great, what do we need to keep here and hold on to here and savor, because that's going to be something you can keep doing for the rest of your life. And it's not just
Yeah.
a blip in time, it is like a way of being through time.
Yeah. The other thing that I loved about kind of what you were saying and how we captured the what is the now is I think it really does help in that moment when a leveling up actually happens. Because, and we're going to get to that, we've already talked about it a bit, this idea of celebration. It is so easy, I think, for humans to think, like, "Ah, that's not worth celebrating. Like, other people have done better things or harder things or whatever." We start comparing and feel like it's not worthy. It's bullshit or
Yep.
BS, the YouTube algorithm, whatever I am allowed to say. But, when we look at this and say, like, oh, when I started, I was feeling super down and frustrated, and all of these things sucked. And like, I couldn't stand going on LinkedIn to try to find another job or any of that other stuff. But now, like, I freaking love it, and I'm mentoring other people on how to do it. Like, you can see that gap, and of course, that is worth celebrating.
Absolutely.
Ugh,
Absolutely. Do you think,
yeah.
let's dive in and use that as a segue to dive into the range model? And I think, the acronym's the acronym, but I think you and I really nailed what constitutes a really strong celebration. And it doesn't have to be this big, like, frou-frou party. It doesn't have to be like all kazoos and jazz
No.
whistles and confetti. But what we dive into is it's relationships, affirmation, novelty, gratitude, and embodiment. And there's different ways that you can explore what that means for you. Our guide is there to like be a guide in that experience. But I think to your point, it doesn't matter. There's no judgment on what you're celebrating, no judgment on how you're celebrating it. Our ask is that you just simply acknowledge it. And I think you and I would both agree it's best in community. Even if it's a community of like one other person, finding somebody to acknowledge and share like that vulnerability is so powerful to say,
Mm-hmm.
you know what? I'm going to acknowledge that this time last year, I was on the job hunt, and now look at me now. And like, I just want someone else to share that experience with, because it's worthy of being shared, because it's personal to you and your life and your level up moment.
Yeah, it is. Having that moment be witnessed, it's so powerful. It makes this feel more real. It makes the emotions more just like locked in. And that is a big part of how we learn, of how we remember these stories, is when we have that really strong emotion. And so it might feel a little weird and awkward to go and talk to a person about it. It might feel like you're bragging or whatever. But like, no, you're celebrating. And the people who are part of your village and part of your circle, who you care about and care about you, they're going to love celebrating with you. I had to learn this too because it felt uncomfortable. But now there are times where I will like call Jared and be like, I need to celebrate. And we just get on there and celebrate and like dance together, because why not? Like, it's so much better when it's with somebody else.
And when you celebrate, other people learn what's important to you. And that means like, not only that, but when you go to the next level, which is going to be a maybe bigger challenge, a different stretch, like they know what is important to you and are willing to show up and support. And so part of this is doubling down on community and that support system that we all have.
Yeah. I think the big thing about celebrations that I would want for everybody to know is there is literally nothing that is too small to be celebrated. If you want to celebrate the fact that you just got out of bed, celebrate that. If you want to celebrate the fact that you stayed in bed, celebrate that. If you want to I washed a dish. If you want to celebrate that, celebrate that. Nothing is too small. If it feels like a win for you, celebrate it.
Absolutely. I think the thing I'm most in love with the range model, I think, is gratitude. I think that's the secret sauce. If you pay attention to nothing else in the range model, gratitude is where I would put your attention. It is something you can do on your own. It is something that incorporates a reflection practice. And all of these have scientific backing if you want to find the research journal to back it up. But gratitude, I think, is so underestimated in its transformational impact on people's lives. Taking even every day, like creating a gratitude practice to say, these are the 3 things I'm grateful for, huge. And so that in itself is a celebration. You're celebrating at the end of the day the things you're grateful for. And I think if you take nothing else from the list, fold that in, create a practice out of it, because it's a game changer.
Are you comfortable showing us your gratitude for the leveling up about YouTube?
I am grateful that I have a partner to do all of it with. I am grateful that we get to create content that makes me excited to hit record. And I am grateful that I had great teachers showing me how to use great tools.
I love that. Thanks for demonstrating that. I'm grateful to be doing this with you too. I'm grateful that I'm not the person who had to learn to edit anything yet.
And I'm also grateful for anyone who decides to like and subscribe.
Ooh, me too. I love that. I'm extra grateful for anybody who chooses to comment. Yeah, also with the range model, because sometimes coming up with ideas on how to celebrate can be a little overwhelming, we've got a roll table with 20 different ways that you can celebrate. You can roll a d20 and see which one you get, or you can just look through the list and grab the one that's the most interesting to you. But we've got that in the guide too, in the description below. And there's some really, really fun ones on there. And then some ones that I'm like, ooh, what would happen if I rolled that one? Be a little scary.
I feel like this has been a great preview of our guide to leveling upwards. If you're interested in downloading your copy, you can check it out in the description below, where you can find a link to download your own workbook. Autumn, any final thoughts as we think about leveling upwards, advice we want to give to anyone who might be catching us right now this month?
Yeah, I mean, my biggest advice would be to try it, because we often just go through the motions, go through day to day, accomplish big things, accomplish small things, but that are still really impactful, and then don't take the time to acknowledge them. And if you get this workbook, go through these pieces, when you take the time to level up and be excited about that, the same way that you are when your character levels up, it is going to have such an amazing impact on you and how you feel about your progress in your life. So please just try it. Just try it once. And if you don't like it, that's fine. But I really love the idea of seeing, like, why not be as excited about our life as we are about our characters?
And I think my piece of advice would be, it's one thing to have the workbook, it's another thing to have the time. So download the workbook and schedule 2 hours just for you to dive in, think about the questions that are inside, and think about your next level up, or your current level, or where you want to head to next. There's going to be something in this guide to help you wherever you are right now. So download it and schedule the time, because you deserve the time for leveling upwards.
Yes. And then after you do the first one, guess what? You just leveled up and you can do it again. I think doing it the first time is a level up experience. And apparently we're milestone based.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us for this week's video on leveling upwards. And until next time, remember, chaotic good vibes only.
Chaotic good vibes only. Bye.
Ciao.